I'm told that to be in the height of trendy fashion these days, you've got to wear shoes like these.
Some of the wildest trends exploded in popularity in the mid-1970s. Let's explore the era of pet rocks, earth shoes, pinball machines, big collars, fat ties, customized vans, and so much more. Number 25, mood rings. The mood ring was one of the biggest fashion fads of the 1970s. It's just a ring that measures your body's surface temperature. There's no real meaning behind it, but back in the 70s, people were into all sorts of new age trends, and these became a major commercial success. If you have poor circulation in your hands and your fingers are always cold, mood rings will always be black all the time on your fingers. Number 24, clackers, bullas, click-clacks. When the principal of a school in the 1970s announced over the loudspeaker, click-clacks are now permanently banned from school grounds and will be confiscated on site. You can guess what the rebels did. They were cool when you got them going, but they definitely hurt if you missed. Some kids would throw them onto the overhead power and phone lines. We still have no idea about this word fascination 70 era had with swinging things around and hurting themselves. They were first made out of glass, and they would blow up in people's faces, causing serious injuries, but later on switched to plastic. Number 23, corduroy pants. Who remembers colored Levi corduroy pants? They were hard to forget, especially the sound of someone walking with those pants. It was something like shwip, 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 but that doesn't do it justice. They were called toughskins because of the myth that you had to have tough skin to endure all the abuse you got for wearing them. That's just genius marketing in our opinion. Did you know that if you fall in the snow wearing corduroy pants, the snow gets stuck in the grooves and your pants will get wet as it melts? That's super impractical, but we all know the 70s aren't really known for practicality. Levi's experimented with all sorts of different fabrics in the same basic cut in the 70s, different thicknesses of velour, whipcord, hopsack.
Who not only sponsored today's video, but they provided every single piece of clothing you'll see me rocking throughout the lookbook.
Number 22, pet rocks. If you look at product marketing with suspicion in 2024, pet rocks definitely had something to do with it. It skyrocketed in 1975, and within about 6 months, they sold over 1 million pet rocks for $4 each. It was just a rock in a box with some straw and a care manual for tricks to teach. The creator had the idea in a bar as his friends complained about their pets. Buying one for $4 in 1975 would be the same as buying one for $21 now via inflation. It's not as stupid as it sounds. The manual came with it was pretty funny. That's what people were buying. That and the novelty, of course. Our favorite line was something like, when you want your rock to come to you, just say its name and walk slowly towards it, and soon it will be there. It also included instructions for teaching your pet rock to swim. They warned that this was an advanced trick, and it may not return to you. In the event this occurred, they advised you to order another pet rock and try again. Did you get our reference about marketing and suspicion now? Number 21, Steve Martin. During the 1970s, Steve Martin was the most successful stand-up comedian in America, earning the level of commercial success. Sold out arena performances, platinum records, hit singles, and crazy fans, usually reserved for rock stars. Old Steve Martin somehow reminds us of a combination of Harrison Ford and Leslie Nielsen, but only in this picture, as his hair turned gray immediately after this picture was taken. One of our favorite Steve Martin stories was when he finished a show and took the whole audience to McDonald's drive-thru and ordered 300 cheeseburgers. Once all the cheering had died down, he changed his order to a small Diet Coke. Number 20, really high platform shoes. The 1970s were proof that someone did put psychedelics in the public water supply. Just looking at these high platform shoes hurts our feet. But 70-era guys will be offended if they heard this, because this is the fashion they followed. Wide lapels, elephant leg bell bottoms, and shoes that could sprain an ankle if twisted too far. Sideburns and slick mustaches, hairy chests with open shirts, polyester double-knit leisure suits, puffy sleeve shirts, vests, lavender or peach formal wear, and velvet trim. We would not be surprised if orthopedic doctors skyrocketed in demand in the 70s, as platform shoes were also used for playing soccer apparently. This hip culture showed that people didn't take themselves quite seriously. They gladly dressed like clowns and enjoyed every minute of it. Every era looks ridiculous with time. We will surely be judged for our yoga pants as everyday wear. Most decades have their fashion period that is cringe in retrospect. The 1980s had ridiculously poofy hair, day-glow fabric, and spandex. Lots and lots of spandex. As soon as 1991 came around and grunge hit, everybody dropped those 80s styles like a bad habit.
A statement for sure. I'm kind of more confident in these. Don't get me wrong though, I'm still reaching for everything I can hold on to. I'm like grabbing all my plants.
Number 19, pinball machines. This is one of the 70s fad that even the latest iPad Pro cannot replace. The whole point of pinball is the actual moving ball, feedback, rubber bumpers, slingshots, and all of the things you don't get in a simulation on a flat screen display. Virtual pinball cannot be compared with real pinball from the 70s. It's like watching a movie instead of playing something real. Pinball machines became super popular because they were fun and exciting to play. These machines, with their bright lights, cool sounds, and flashy designs, were like magnets for people. You could find them everywhere, from arcades to bars and even pizza places. Pinball was a game where you used flippers to keep a metal ball bouncing around, trying to hit targets and score points. The thrill of trying to beat the high score kept people coming back. Plus, new technology made pinball machines even better with more features and special effects. They became a social activity too, with friends competing against each other. All these factors together made pinball a big hit on the 1970s, creating a lasting love for the game. Number 18, CB radio. Breaker 19 for a radio check. Hey Northbound, are we on for tonight? That's a Big 10-4, good buddy. CB radios just got out of hand fast in the 1970s. It was literally everywhere. People were in love with the jargon and culture. All of a sudden, everybody wanted one. CBs weren't just for truckers anymore, and folks bought them for their homes as well as their vehicles. After all, these predated cell phones were a way to communicate wirelessly that wasn't expensive. We'd say the fad took off in the wake of popularity of the highway outlaw movies of the late 70s like Gumball Rally, Smokey and the Bandit, and the Cannonball Run films. These were most likely the main drivers of marketing fads that popularized CB radio trucker culture into the mainstream. Nowadays, it is mostly popular among cultural conservatives and people in rural areas. Then, cell phones and the internet pretty much caused its decline. If you were traveling and had one in the car or truck, it was a great tool as well for asking directions, places to go for food in that area, and calling for assistance if you were in trouble. Even the police had them in their cars and would monitor 9 and 19, but in general, it was like a big party line.
Hey guys, how's it going? Can I get a radio check, please?
Number 17, huge sideburns on men. This is a 1970s barbershop hairstyle reference guide. Yeah, we're definitely with millennials on this one. Barbers in the late 60s, early 70s were very resistant to long hair on boys and men. To them, long hair meant something like that style John Hamm wore in Mad Men. So folks who had longer hair stayed away from barbers and started having haircuts by their moms, girlfriends, or hairstylists. All of a sudden, barbers realized that they were losing lots of business, so they started a frantic effort to get with the times. The problem was that most barbers had no idea how to style hair, nor did the people who supplied these barbers. The result was posters like this that tried to be hip, but ended up being clueless. The Beatles became popular at the same time, and men's hairstyles got much longer. Cheap Beatles wigs were available mostly as a joke, but long hairstyles were growing. In less than 5 years, the great generational divide was at full throttle. The hippie movement gained momentum as a protest of the government and its involvement in the war in Southeast Asia. Facial hair was making a resurgence. If you didn't have a beard, you probably had sideburns that were searching for a hookup with your mustache. It was a great time to be young, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Number 16, Earth shoes. Here at Vintage TV, we are willing to do lots of hippie things that happened in the 70s. Earth shoes isn't one of them. The sales pitch was genius though. If you walk barefoot in the sand and look at your footprint, you'll see that the heel makes a deeper impression than the rest of the foot. Therefore, the heel was lower in the Earth shoe. Unfortunately, that heel in the sand theory was about the only scientific basis for the Earth shoe. It actually hurt a lot of people's feet, and their popularity declined. According to the internet, they may or may not now still be in business somewhere. The original owner sold the brand in 2021, and the new owners have bankrupted it. You may see some around in inventory, but we doubt you'll see any more new ones being made.
Hi, my name is Sally Combs with Earth Brands Footwear, a company that has an over 40-year history in making comfort.
Number 15, Grizzly Adams. This is a 1970s show that will make you want to move to the mountains and get a bear. Dan Haggerty, the Grizzly Adams character, lived a crazy life, raised tons of animals, was arrested and convicted for selling cocaine, and was a frequent customer of the Bunny Ranch. One could only hope to have lived that colorful of a life. If Grizzly hadn't hung out with a bear all the time, BJ and the Bear probably wouldn't get made, and we would never get to see a trucker and his best monkey friend travel across these United States. There have been many incidents of people trying to escape law enforcement by living out in the woods, so the premise may not have been absurd after all. You never knew when it was on, usually a Sunday afternoon, but not every Sunday. The show just appeared like a bear out of the woods. Bonus number 15, macrame plant hangers. Macrame stuff was everywhere in the 70s. Some of us are old enough to have been around in the 70s when macrame plant hangers were all the rage. They were made from yarn, cotton twine, leather, hemp, jute, and even wire. It was also very hot to make your own macrame hangers, as well as macrame art, clothing, jewelry, draperies, and much more. Then the macrame craze died out. By the mid-1980s, it was just so passé. Even to mention the word macrame meant you passed for a hippie. And not just any hippie, but rather a throwback hippie. We thought macrame was long forgotten and never expected to see it resurrected, but it's definitely making a comeback with a modern touch. Number 14, the invisible pet leash. This is what happens when you have no smartphone, social media, or cable TV. People just made up random activities for fun or sales that became fads. We are not here to judge, but one very important question has to be asked here. Why? The toy was a stiff, curly wire with a collar that made it look like you were walking an invisible dog. People thought it was hilarious and surprising. When someone saw you walking with it, they might first think you had a real dog, then realize there was nothing there and laugh. The toy was simple but very funny, which made it popular at parties, parks, and even on the streets. It was a way for people to show their sense of humor and make others laugh. The invisible pet leash was also cheap and easy to get, so lots of people bought one. It became a big hit because it was silly and a fun way to play a trick on others.
Alright, so here's the before. The old bathroom was dark, cluttered and dated, worn and unfinished.
Number 13, leisure suits. This is the height of the 70s awful fashion and fabrics. The leisure suit was only in style for a few years, but it had the impact of a fashion bomb. A slim-cut, wide-lapelled, synthetic fibered fashion bomb. It told the world, I'm here to relax, and people loved it for about 10 minutes. Still, while it faded pretty quickly from the fashion world, it embedded itself for good in the cultural consciousness. Perhaps it's the everlasting nature of polyfibers. The 70s style leisure suit was originally created by designer Jerry Rosengarten in 1970. He used it to showcase a newly developed type of polyester, and Lee Jeans produced it. Lee put it on the market as, of all things, business attire. The look never did make the cut in the office. It was, however, perfect for the casual anything-goes atmosphere of key parties, lighted dance floors, and just sitting around a fondue pot. For a few years, leisure suits were it, often paired with gold medallions, sideburns, and a complete lack of manscaping. By the end of the decade, though, the suit had somehow gone from fad to joke, finally replaced by the power suits of the money-hungry 80s. Hippie culture no more. The leisure suit faded into the annals of bad fashion history, a non-biodegradable reminder of a swinging decade. Not that the leisure suit is entirely gone, designers still make them today, only they're typically made of natural fibers instead of poly, and they feature narrower lapels, match stitching, and a slim leg suited for a shoe with no hint of platform. We are not big fans of the poly everything trend. Everyone's wearing yoga pants and the male equivalent joggers as well as tops made of the same material. Cotton is like an exotic relic of the past now, and we are quite literally aiming for plastic everything these days. We don't trust having plastic hug your skin all day every day either, not even mentioning all the microplastics it contributes to the environment with washing it and ending up in landfills. It's an enormous industry. Number 12, long hair on men. Young people are going to rebel by whichever way they can. It's in the human DNA to distance yourself from the previous generation, even if you can only do it in small ways. Part of it was rebellion, sure, but it also had to do with being natural. In the late 60s and early 70s, people started to become disenchanted with mainstream society and what our culture had brought about ecologically, and were particularly becoming knowledgeable and critical of all the concrete jungles and all the chemicals. Books like Silent Spring were making people very aware of man's impact on the earth, so people started to become much more interested in the Back to the Land movements, which enveloped things like living on farms and in communes, eating more natural health foods, and wearing cotton and wool versus polyesters. Recycling and beekeeping and things like that were becoming big with the aging hippie crowd. Then along with all those other more in tune with nature things, growing out your hair started to happen because it was considered part of letting nature do its thing. Long hair was also a symbol of the counterculture. It was associated with anti-war protests, drug experimentation, rock and roll, the Back to Land movement, and sexual experimentation. Those ideas were threatening to a lot of people. The Beatles got the ball rolling. By 1967, it was a clear marker of your status. By 1969, it was solidified. The southern rock bands of the early 70s were cultural radicals for their long hair. The South was still culturally opposed to long-haired hippies, but acts like the Allmans and Lynyrd Skynyrd forced the subject. You could be proud of the South, but still be a poet, a songwriter, and a long-haired hippie. There was a sea of change in the 1970s. News broadcasters and movie TV stars were sporting long hair. It was no longer radical, it was modern. Number 11, $6 Million Man. Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. We have the capability to make the world's first bionic man. Steve Austin will be that man. Better than he was before. Better, stronger, faster. Dubbed as the greatest intro in the history of television, $6 Million Man is easily one of the best shows of the 1970s. After all, there is only one man in the entire universe that can lift cars with bionic legs, a bionic arm, and an ordinary spine. Colonel Austin's fictional journey began in the pages of Cyborg, a 1972 novel by prolific science fiction author Martin Caidin. In the book, Austin is injured in a crash and gets outfitted with cybernetic replacement parts by a government agency. In turn, Austin becomes their field agent. Caidin would write 3 more novels starring Austin, but not before he'd struck a deal for the character to make his small screen debut. The $6 Million Man series launched 50 years ago and was an instant hit, reaching number 11 in the Nielsen ratings in its first year on the air. The show was strong enough that producers introduced another cybernetic character, Jamie Summers, in a 2-part episode in 1975. Though Summers appeared to have died at the end of the 2-parter, she was revealed to be alive when launched into her own spin-off, The Bionic Woman, in 1976. Anderson and Brooks started playing Oscar and Rudy on both shows simultaneously. For the 1975-76 season, both shows were in the Nielsen Top 10, with The Bionic Woman even ranking above its parent show.
I've been flying for 52 years. I've been flying over oceans, deserts, mountains, seen all kinds of things in the air, and this one is totally, absolutely baffling.
Number 10. Nou Jackets. The jacket began to be marketed as the Nou jacket in Europe and America in the mid-1960s. It was popular there in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Its popularity spurred by the aspirational class's growing awareness of foreign cultures, by the minimalism of the lifestyle, and, in particular, by the Beatles. Unlike in the Western Hemisphere, the Nou jacket is quite popular in Southeast Asia, especially in India and neighboring countries. It is named after pundit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was an important part of the Indian independence movement and became the first Prime Minister of India. The feature that distinguishes this jacket from a normal suit jacket is its mandarin collar, which was originally part of court dress in northern India. This collar is a short stand-up collar that is not turned down and does not feature a lapel. It is named after the mandarins in Imperial China, but at the same time it combines features of a traditional Indian menswear with British tailoring quite successfully. And probably that is why it became a staple in every Indian men's wardrobe during and after the Raj. Although rarely seen in the Americas and Europe on civilian clothes, the mandarin collar is popular with military attire. Number 9. Balsa Wood Airplanes. There aren't many young people who do things quite like this anymore. The old models were either die-cut or printed on, and you had to cut out all the pieces by hand. The ones with the rubber bands and landing gear are so cool, especially when used in big parking lots where they could touch down in a sweet, smooth landing. Model airplanes have been a popular hobby since the 1920s. Early modelers built from scratch, but entrepreneurs soon saw the business possibilities in making and selling model kits. Balsa wood was a favorite building material due to its strength, light weight, and the ease with which it could be shaped. Number 8. Biorhythm Machines. It is a pseudoscientific fad popular in the 1970s and based on ideas from the late 19th century, where it was believed that there was a 23-day male cycle and a 28-day female cycle. There's this idea that aspects of your life are cyclical and, based on your date of birth, you can predict when your social, financial, etc. aspects of your life are at high points and low points. There's zero science backing any of this up. The best way to notice is because there are days when you certainly feel good with no apparent reason or otherwise. When you have a starting point of your hands, the biorhythm concept starts with these experiences.
As the owner of Mid-Century Mobler, we travel all around the world to Denmark, Sweden, other parts of Europe to find the best mid-century pieces.
Number 7. Conversation pits in living rooms. Interior design trends, much like those of fashion, are cyclical. Certain features which appear in our homes today often had their first wave some decades ago. The 1960s and 70s are decades which saw their fair share of questionable choices, and many that we hope to never see again. One of the most distinct features of the 60s and 70s design, the conversation pit, also referred to as sunken living rooms, sunken sofas, or sofa pits. They are a marriage between architecture and interior design, a seating area built into the very bones of a house. They tend to be sunk below the usual floor level by a step or two and are normally enclosed on at least 3 sides. Number 6. One income was enough. What happened to our economy that a single person with only an entry-level job and a high school diploma can no longer afford a single-family home with a car and an education for any kids and also have enough time and money to go on road trips and vacations? What caused this change? This was a reality in the 1970s but is now a memory. One explanation is that the government invested heavily in a lot of things in the 60s: infrastructure, government-backed mortgages, funding for higher education, and so on. A generation of people reaped the benefits, then closed the door on subsequent generations. Number 5. Appliances that were actually built to last. They were built to last. Back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, quality was important. Planned obsolescence wasn't a thing yet. People didn't have as much disposable income, so what you sold had to be good if you wanted to stay in business. There used to be an incentive for the company to make the highest quality product. Durability was a primary marketing application. Now that the market is saturated with so many makers of the same products, that incentive no longer exists. Today it's more about making as much of the product and selling as many as possible to the most dollars.
This is a 1961 RCA Victor, model 211 CDR 446.
Number 4. Fondue Parties. Growing up in the 70s, most parents definitely had fondue parties. They would bring it out a few times a year, mostly for holidays. Fondue was a weird craze. Anybody remember those melting pot restaurants that existed for a while? As far as we're concerned, fondue is the perfect dinner party meal. The ingredients are affordable. There's very little preparation required besides chopping up the dipping foods, and you definitely don't have to spend any time stressing in the kitchen when your guests arrive. Fondue allows everyone to sit down and enjoy a communal meal together, recreating the atmosphere of being circled around a bonfire, toasting marshmallows over the flames somewhere in the great outdoors. Number 3. Bell-bottoms. Bell-bottom pants became super popular in the 1970s for several fun reasons. First, they looked really cool. These pants are tight at the top but get wide at the bottom, making a bell shape. Many famous people like rock stars and movie actors started wearing them. When people saw their favorite celebrities in bell-bottoms, they wanted to wear them too. The 1970s was a time when people liked to express themselves with bold and colorful clothing. They came in many colors and patterns, perfect for standing out. They were also comfy to wear and easy to dance in, which was great for all the parties and discos. It also fit perfectly with the hippie style of the 1970s, which was all about peace, love, and having fun. Number 2. Choppers. Ask any child of the 70s or 80s which bike they'd like to ride dressed in their flares, a tank top, and oversized collared shirt, and their reply would be unanimous: the Raleigh Chopper. Its unique design was dripping with Californian cool and saw more than 1.5 million choppers manufactured. The original seat design rose 90 degrees to the saddle and was entirely straight, resulting in a rather unstable ride. A slight seat kink in the chopper improved the situation. The designers also shortened the saddle slightly in an effort to deter use doubling up on the chopper, which had made it even more unstable and dangerous. Raleigh also narrowed the handlebar slightly, again for safety reasons. The iconic gear shifter became a little less dubious to limit the chances of teenage boys never having children if they fell off. It was released in 1972. All of these alterations paid off and brought Raleigh an even more fanatical and significant fan base. The chopper's culturally relevant status heightened by appearances in 80 movie classics such as The Goonies and Back to the Future.
Get it that 70s feel is a psychedelic paint job.
Ryan's gonna love this.
I want bold colors, nice.
Number 1. Customized vans. SUVs didn't really exist in the 1970s. Vans were the bigger option from a straight-up station wagon as young Americans were on the road in the 1970s. The hippies, students, ex-vets out of Vietnam, they all wanted to see the country, meet people, and travel on the cheap. Gas was cheap. You could sleep in the van and even park on the street in various cities for weeks at a time and bring all your friends. People looking for adventure, opportunity, love, jobs, you name it. People loved making their vans unique and cool. They added bright, colorful paint jobs with wild designs, comfy seats, and fun gadgets inside. These vans were like rolling party rooms or cozy little homes on wheels. These were some of the wildest and craziest fads people followed in the 1970s. If you're into old school stuff, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Let us know in the comments section if we missed a fad that you think was on full display in the 70s.